time for the underdogs. 2 times that they doubted me. You know I did it for my mama and them. Only people know who proud of me. Now I'm getting where I gotta be. And you better want me take off. You brought the beast from inside of me. I bet on myself and it paid off.
All right, we're getting this going. This is episode 4, and I've got my man Jerry Eicke here. And one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I did as I started the podcast was just have people on that I felt like I could have real conversations with, people who know me well, I know well, and whose mindset at the end of the day I appreciate, I admire, and feel like I've also kind of grown together over the last few years too. Jerry knows every version of Coach Sam Tooley over the last few years, and I think he's helped really build that perspective that I have over the last few years as well, which I appreciate because I think you are really the culmination of the people you surround yourself with. I think we're both incredibly lucky to have a very special group of people around us building businesses together, but also doing life together. So appreciate you massively for being here.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it.
Episode
How did
4,
it take
man.
4 episodes to get me
It
here,
was
man?
it was just schedules.
Thought I'd be like a 1 or 2 guy.
It was just schedules.
Like-
No offense to the other guys, but we made it happen.
All right.
And I think I'm excited to dive into everything. Excited to dive into the businesses we've built over the last few years and continue to build, but also just the perspective that you've gained over your career, which has been tremendous, but also very different in a lot of stages of it too. Because I think that perspective helps a lot of people. It helps me every day understand what's possible and the fact that there's really no rules to play this game by, but we get to kind of make it up as we go. So I'd love for you to share a little context in terms of where you've been, what you're up to now, your version of your story, and then we'll go from there.
Sounds good, and I appreciate the intro. Hedge fund space, I mean, that's kind of, where like the last, 18 years before I got into all the things that we're involved in now, it was 18 years in the hedge fund space. So I just kind of cut my teeth there. Started at a small fund, $1 million fund turned into $1 billion fund over a course of 18 years, and a lot of ups and downs and trials and tribulations, a lot of pressure, high pressure environment, which I think helps me now because like I don't feel like in the restaurant space or the gym space I could be ever thrown in a fire like I've been thrown into in that space. So I like to think that I'm hardened by that. So I think overall, I probably don't exude the same amount of emotion a lot of the people that we surround ourselves with exude over kind of smaller things, because I think I've been through a lot, in that space, and then coming out of it, getting involved in. Really, I talked to, Joe when we were leaving here before, and where he was asking me, my transition from, being, in the hedge fund space and kind of going into what I went into. And he was like, what, made you, make the jump, and
He's stealing all my questions.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good question, but it's like, you make a change because I was burnt out and I was done and I was overstressed and it was time for me to leave. I had the ability to leave. But at the same time, you meet some other people that you like their businesses and what they want to do, and Joey being one of them, with Salad House. And it just came at a really nice time because like, I'm not someone who could be like, well, we could retire. I have enough money. I could kind of sit back and chill out. And like, all right, for like how long? 2 days, 3 days, a week?
Yeah, you're not worried
and then like, what am I moving on to? So it really came at a time when, I met some good people, Joey in this case, from a Salad House perspective, timing was right. And it's like, what the hell else am I going to do? I got nothing else. Let's take a shot at this and let's move forward. So that was kind of the transition from, the hedge fund space, to kind of food space. And then, I got involved in some pliables, on a franchisee level, franchisor level on Salad House. And then obviously, working with you and as part of Alpha has been a big journey as well. So I got a lot of stuff going on, but it's been fun, man.
And I feel like that's like just the tip of the iceberg at the end of the day. But when you got into the hedge fund world, more just curious on my side, like, was that always a goal of yours? Was that always the ambition, or like you were like, I have to be the finance guy, or what did that journey look like to get you into a world where you stayed there for 18 years? So clearly something about it excited you, but was that always the case?
I mean, I always loved money from from a young age. Like I was like, even remember back in the day, one of my like original screen names on the computer was like Money Fan. So I am a money fan. So like Yeah, that's part of it. I mean, prior to the hedge fund space, I owned some parking lots. We did valley parking. We had a parking concept and wound up selling that business, and then wound up staying in the parking industry. I don't even know how much of that you know
Yeah.
about. So I was in the parking industry. I was running parking garages for Central Parking and Kinney Parking in Connecticut and in New York, then Connecticut, and had a really cushy job. Like I sold the parking business that I had, moved into the running parking lots and parking garages, and it was something that was nice and was easy. But I had a couple of friends that were in the hedge fund space, and they're like they needed investors. They knew I had sold a company, I had some money, and they wanted somebody who could invest. And they had a structure that they invested in that I was like, wow, that's a pretty unique structure. So I would invest with them, and then I was like, wow, I made some really good money in a really short period of time. That's pretty interesting. I would invest again and make some good money again. I'm like, I need to learn more about this business. Like, what are these guys doing that they could um, do this? And that's when I spent more time with my friends that I went into the hedge fund space with, and wound up joining their fund, because it was like, hey man, you could do this. Like, you could learn this. You're a business guy. You've made money. You had success. You have good contacts. Why don't you come over? I'm like, well, what does it pay? They're like, nothing. It's like one of those kind of eat what you kill type of environment. We were, funding publicly traded companies, small publicly traded companies, but it was, it was lucrative if you can hustle and you can have a good conversation and you were straightforward, honest, and, and be willing to work and bet on yourself. And, I remember, like I said, I had a job that I was like running, operations for the state of Connecticut for this company, making hundreds of thousands of dollars, like, whatever, 25, 30 years ago. And then I just came home one day and I was like, "Man, I think we're going to do this hedge fund thing. I want to join these guys." And she's like, "What does it pay?" I'm like, "Nothing." Like what? So we wanted to, moving back from Connecticut to New Jersey, and I just dove in. And I mean, I think it's you have to take those chances. If you want to get the outcome that we had. Like you said, I was there for 17, almost 18 years. So most people, I think, in my situation, be like, dude, you could stay at this company, probably make $400,000 or $500,000, become, some senior level guy, and put it on cruise control for the rest of your life, get a retirement package. And for me, it was like, nah, man, like it just doesn't feel right. Like this other thing was exciting, it was friends. They were doing it. I didn't think anybody, wasn't anything that was too complicated. But the way I describe it is the way they invested, or way we structured investments. It was kind of like a language that no one else really spoke in the finance world. So like, even though I don't consider myself any super genius or super smart guy, but like I was learning this one little language that no one else spoke, and I learned how to speak it really, really well. And then I was fluent in it. And then like you could have the smartest guys in the world walk in the door, and when I was like, bing, bang, 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 like speaking that language that we spoke, they didn't speak it, and they're like, wow, how do I learn that? So
now I know how you
that's just
talk to
evolved.
yourself in your mind, by the way.
Yeah,
That's what
exactly.
happens in Jerry's brain
Yeah.
every day. So I feel like a theme there, though, is that idea of betting on yourself, right?
Yeah.
And I'm curious for you, whether it's today when you think about new opportunities, or through those different bigger jumps. Like, is there a conversation that you have with yourself around evaluating the opportunity, taking that leap, or is it really just as simple as a gut feeling and saying like, yeah, this feels right, and I'm ready to do that?
I'm definitely more of a gut feeling type of person. I've kind of like a ready, fire, aim, and then let's move it along and see if we can make it happen. Because even if you don't completely hit the bullseye, if you move your situation forward, or in a better position, then I feel like I didn't miss out on something. Like I still bettered my position. Okay, now we readjust. And like, that's kind of been, my philosophy is, act quickly, try to get a good understanding. I'm not going to just leap without considering, but get a good understanding for the situation and try to make a move. And if I think that it could slightly better, in the worst case scenario, slightly better where I am today, then I will want to make that move. Now, that being said, I do feel like through the course of these businesses that I've surrounded myself with people who are not like that, which kind of tugs a little bit, and it's just like, well, hold on a second, man. Like, did you think about, and I think that's good to have those, because you don't want to just have, yeah, man, let's all do it. Yeah, look, go ahead, go. Then it's like, next thing you know, like my money's on fire.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I'm not saying, like I said, I don't think I'm the smartest guy in the world. So like, I like to have smart people around me who are thought out. And you know the people, you're one of them that is around me that's smart and is more thought out. And I'm more of, impulsive, act, bet on yourself, we'll make it happen. Let's fucking go get it. That's more my style.
I appreciate you saying that. However, I don't know if I fully agree in this. I think we're wired very similarly from a sense of like, it will, whether it will work out or it won't work out, like, let's go find out. Right. And I think I oftentimes have to really be intentional about slowing down and making sure that that next decision is one that I've actually thought through and calculated. And I think, over the course of the years, whether let's use Alpha Fit Club as an example, I've gotten better at being more thoughtful and calculated, but also the stakes are higher, right? There's more people betting on us. It took time to get here. When we first started, realistically, my mindset was just like, who cares if we fail, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, it mattered tremendously. We were pouring our time and energy into it, but there was this like, so what mentality where it's like the worst case scenario is like, it doesn't work and we'll figure out what happens next. But now, and I'm curious for you, now
100%.
the stakes are higher. There's people who have bet on us big. And again, just to reiterate, Jerry's one of the partners at Salad House, right?
Mhm.
Becoming a massive brand. Alpha Fit Club, 20 plus locations. There's franchisees who have bought into the systems. There's people who have quit their jobs. It's something we've been talking about a lot lately. People have quit their jobs with families to bet on the vision that we've put in place, the opportunity we have too. But there's a burden of responsibility on us to execute. So I'm curious, with that in mind, and the back of your mind as you approach these decisions on these businesses, do you find yourself to being more naturally inclined to take your time and think things through versus maybe when we first started the businesses?
Yeah, maybe a little bit, but not tremendously. I mean, I do realize that, I certainly feel that pressure that you feel. When people have, literally, and especially because, I feel like a lot of times, I'm one of the older guys, the more senior guys, probably the more trusted guys in the room because I've been around the block a little bit. So I think people kind of, we'll talk to everybody, but in the end, like we'll come to the guy who's, kind of the older guy, the senior guy. Hey, man, what do you really think of it? You feel good about like what this is, um, so I think there's that, I feel that added pressure and that added responsibility. So I feel it I mean, I really do. I feel it in a number of different ways. I feel it for my partners, who, haven't hit that level of success yet in their career just because they haven't had time on the planet as long as I have, like I think they're all, headed that way. So I feel it for my partners. I feel it for the franchise partners that we're involved in and on all these levels. And I feel it, for the team members, for people, like I said, who have like had opportunities to go in other careers or other paths. And like, because you and I have made conversations with them, they're like, man, I'm going to take a lesser paying job with these guys because I think they're onto something, so I feel a ton of pressure,
Yeah.
From a number of different, levels, a number of different ways, in those scenarios, definitely.
I feel like it's good pressure though. Joe and I were talking about this before on the last podcast around, why you want certain things for yourself, right? And sometimes wanting more for yourself, more money, more success, more whatever, can sometimes come from a place of feeling like you're not worth anything, right? Or you feel less than or what have you, right? And that can feel like a negative pull, if you will, versus feeling almost inspired, right, by the fact that you have had people bet on you. And I think, the pressure that you and I often feel is good pressure,
Yeah.
right? It's pressure to show up because we want to show people that this was worth betting on, right? And so I'm curious for you, and listen, we're salespeople at the end of the day. We've got to sell the vision for our brands, but we also believe in it. So we're not selling bullshit. It's stuff we
Yeah.
really believe in. We're going to back up with the work on our side as well. But when you think about Salad House, when you think about Alpha, when you think about the next 5-10 years of these businesses, like what's the vision that you have for them when you do talk to those people?
Yeah. I mean, I literally look at the vision being like, we just want successful businesses. You've heard me say it all the time. Like we want businesses that in the end, like all these, the logos, the looks, the feel, yeah, in the end, like, do they make money, man? Because like, that's really what it comes down to. And I think, we have so many meetings about so many different things. And you know me, like I always try to bring it back to, okay, great, but how do we get them to make money? How do we get them to make more money? Because ultimately that's it. You know, like, yeah, they bought into us, whether it be for alpha, for the look, the feel, the workout, everything. If all those things are there and they don't make money, they hate us, man.
Mhm.
And it wasn't a good thing for them. And it wasn't a good thing. You know, we had the conversation with them thinking that this could be something that would change their lives in a positive way and do well for them. So when you have a studio that's struggling, you know, or a restaurant that's struggling, like that weighs on me too, you know, like, cause what did we not do that they're in that position? You know, how could we do things differently next time? What can we do to get them in a better spot and make money? And that's really what my focus. I try to, like these guys, on Salad House side, I'm like, we're not a health food charity, man. Like these people, I'm so happy that, like Joey always says, like, I want to get people to smile through their stomachs, and great, awesome. I want that too, man. I want good food, I want good service, but in the end, I want to make money for myself and my family, but I also want to make money for the people that we talked about before that are betting on us, including the franchise owners.
I think, a lot of that comes down to when we talk about it in our meetings is like the inputs drive the output, right? Meaning making money is a byproduct of making the good decisions that ultimately drive to that. So whether it is the marketing, whether it is all of the things that go into it, right? Those little things that pile up, yield that output that we're all looking for at the end of the day, but we've got to reverse engineer it to make sure that that's really top priority, period, right?
Yeah, like I feel like sometimes we go off on tangents on these little things and like get focused on something. Like, can we just bring it back to, like, is this affecting how we're going to make money? Because we need to always bring it back there, because in the end, like, you're not paying bills with aesthetic,
Yeah.
you know?
And I think it's a discipline, right?
Yeah.
Meaning it's a discipline to focus on what matters most and stay true to that versus being a creative person like myself who can get, pulled off track to think about Alpha Games, the main event, right? And thinking about this massive moment for the brand. And yes, I can create the narrative and say like, well, it's going to bring us maybe some franchisees and it's going to help keep us members. But ultimately, I think I can get pulled off track, which is why having partnerships in place that keep you grounded in what matters most. And again, sometimes you need, the brakes to be pumped maybe.
Yeah.
And other times I need to be brought back to kind of that equilibrium where it's like, listen, all of these new products and offerings and marketings and this and that are great, but are we focused in on the core truth of what this business literally is? And it's making money.
Yeah,
at the
but
end of
and
the
it
day.
may not be an immediate reward, like it may not, like the Alpha Games perspective, it may not be an immediate, like, we're gonna profit X dollars off of that, but it's long term. Like, you could certainly sell me on that. Like, hey man, the fact that we've created that Alpha Games, and it's become so popular that it has helped the brand, and it is attracted more studios and more people want to come to Alpha, and then talking about the Alpha Games, that sort of thing. So yeah, not all dollars are like immediate, so I think we're planting a lot of seeds as well.
I think one thing that you've often brought up with your experience at Pliable specifically, obviously you got in super early. I remember
Yeah.
you and I were working out one day in my tiny studio, right? 700 square feet. And we were really just getting to know each other for the first time. And you were telling me, you were like, I'm going to go check out this smoothie spot you were like, I don't know if you heard of it. I
Yeah.
honestly hadn't. And it was Pliables, lo and
Yeah.
behold. And this was 2019 that we were talking about it.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. 2017, 2018. It was early.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was very early, which is wild to think back on. But you've often referenced what Playa kind of had that made it pop, right? And
Yeah.
thinking about, Salad House and Alpha Fit Club as it pertains to that. Maybe talk a little bit about what you find to be true about, these businesses that ultimately thrive and what they kind of share in common.
I mean, Pliables, I was always very impressed by, just because, certainly it was a unique business, and any business that I'm involved in, I'm not involved in it just purely for the money. Like, I have to really enjoy it, So like, if we talk about, you talk about Pliables, Salad House, Alpha, Almost Home, so like all these businesses, I truly, love and believe in them, and enjoy being part of them, and that's why I want to get them to a point where they can really do well for not only our core group, but the people involved in them. Pliables was really a nice intro to this franchise space, because I think Rob and Abby, who are the founders, like, just really did it so well because they were so passionate about it. And you probably remember me talking about when I had left the hedge fund space. I was well capitalized, and I went to Pliables all the time down in Belmar. I loved it. Enjoyed the smoothies. I was a fan of the food. Loved the vibe of the place. And I wanted to buy one of these. It was down the shore, and I'm sure they were expanding North Jersey. And I reached out. And I remember talking to Gary, who you remember, who's was their sales guy at the time, and he was like, yeah, all right, I don't have a lot of time, but like can you do multiple? Can you purchase multiple, and do you not need any financing? Because otherwise I don't even want to talk to you. Like, yeah, I could do multiples and I don't need financing. All right, so we'll do a meeting. I'm like, okay, we'll do a meeting. Yeah, the founders want to have dinner with you, and
Just
I'm
like baller moves.
I'm like,
Yeah.
for what? Like, did you not understand? I have the
Yeah,
money and I
yeah.
want to just open a smoothie place.
Yeah.
Like, I don't, like, what am I missing? Like, yeah, they want to, so like I went and had dinner with Rob and Abby, and, and they sat down and we ate at, went to Asbury Park, had pizza in Asbury Park, and got to know me. And I was like, I can't believe, like, I'm literally being interviewed to own a smoothie shop. Like, this is insane to me, but now I look at it and I was like, these guys were way ahead of their time.
Right.
They had a business, like I think our group was like the 20th franchise, and now they probably have, Playa probably has like 375
Right.
franchises at the time, as we speak today. And at 20, they were like, yeah, man, this is our baby. Like, we don't want to have any assholes that just come here and, open these up because they see lines around the corner for some minute. And that's not what I was doing. Like I said, I enjoyed the product. I enjoyed the vibe. I wanted to do it. So I passed the test. But like, that kind of, as far as any lessons go, that's a great lesson, because there was a lot of people that wanted to open Pliables, and there was a lot of people, yeah, I want to open Pliables. Like, why? I see lines around the corner. Like, what's your favorite Pliable? Like, I don't know, man, but you must be doing something. Like, yeah, man, you're not, so I like to think that we took some of that Salad House and Alpha Fit Club, and applied that, because, I don't remember who said it, but someone said to me, like, hey, listen, if you don't enjoy an hour dinner with somebody, why would you want to enter into a 10-year contract with them?
Yeah.
And I was like, really makes a lot of sense. Now, that's all good on paper, but the reality is, as you build a brand of franchise businesses, like, like, you may not have the perfect fit of a person, but you're like, I need to get these stores open, and we need to take a little bit of a chance. And I think there's an evolution, that both brands, have gone through, where you now can be, a little more selective, because as you've gotten, off the ground and you proved out the concept, and we have studios that do really well. We have, restaurants that do really well in Salad House. You can now be more selective and say, like, man, I'm not feeling this guy. And we did that early on. I know there's some examples that you and I can both discuss of, like, I want to open up the whole state, blah, blah. I don't know, man. Like,
and I love telling that story because it makes me sound like I got these big balls that I can tell somebody with a bag of cash, like, take a walk. But there is something to be said. And I think we've absolutely learned it, especially on something that is so people driven on the Alpha Fit Club side of things, is like, you've got to be the right culture fit to build a community oriented brand, period. And listen, that can be different shapes and sizes for sure. It can be different backgrounds, all of it.
Or it's somebody, maybe it's not you, it's somebody you are going to hire that has that same mindset,
But at minimum, you have to believe in the vision, right? You have to really just say, like, yes, I align with this brand. And I think one of the things I've heard you talk about with Playa specifically is that they had a real brand, right? They had a loyal following. People loved it. And I understand why, you understand why we were also of a similar mindset when it came to Playa. But you need that at its core, because even if you're not going to run the studio every day, or if you're not going to run the store every day, like, you got to like the food, you got to like the classes. And yeah, we had one gentleman come down, stand behind the looking glass at Alpha. He's like, I want all of Connecticut, right? And I was like, all right, man, well, like, let's get you in for a class. Let's get you, in the room so you can really see it. And he's like, I would never take a class. I'm like, what do you mean? And he's just like, well, my wife will take the class, but I don't do this shit. And I'm like, one, your wife could probably kick the shit out of you in this class for sure, based upon that statement. And two, like, this isn't going to be a fit. You're not going to get it. You're not going to be willing to do the work required to make this what it's capable of being, because it's not for you. So I think that's that has been a big lesson for us.
Yeah. And like I said, with all the brands, like, you then, put that, as you evolve, I think you make that more of a priority, to try to get the right people in, and we do it all the time with Salad House too. Like, you'll have, because we put up really nice numbers at Salad House, and people are like, oh man, I want to get a Salad House, man. Like, yeah, man, I love salad house, go there all the time. And we're like, all right, what do you get? Oh man, dude, you don't
Yeah,
go to
you
salad.
call
Like if
bullshit
somebody
real
comes
quick.
back with, yeah, I
Yeah.
get the apple wall. All
Yeah.
right. So like I
Yeah.
love throwing that out there, but it's a same thing with Alpha. And I think because of the, continuing to ask those types of questions and get those types of people, we do have some really nice franchise partners in these brands, which is
Yeah.
pretty cool.
I think one of the things that we've been trying to kind of bring forth on this podcast, even in initial conversations, what I love about this too is so many different personalities already, even though it's all of our friends, right?
Yeah,
Like realistically, whether it's Tim, who's your partner in Salad House, and obviously on Alpha, Kieran, who's your nephew, which we didn't even mention on the
yeah,
freaking
yeah,
podcast, to Joe, who you've known for a long time now
yeah,
through me, to yourself, right? Completely different perspectives, completely different backgrounds. But I think a lot of times people listen to podcasts. Everybody on the podcast is an entrepreneur to some extent. And there's this desire, and yet at the same time, this unrelatability because they're like, these people are all living the life that I want to live. They've taken the chance, right? We talked about that early. They've bet on themselves, and I'm not there. I'm not yet living that life. And so it can become like, I want that thing, but I don't know if it's for me. I don't know if I'm capable of taking that chance, or I just haven't done it yet, right? And one of the things that you and I were chatting about early was, you have a lot of people in your life at different stages, whether it's Parker, your son, who's 25, myself, who's going to be 34. Yeah, I know, man, that's a real number.
yeah,
I got to
man.
figure out my shit
Yeah.
soon. You made a big career change in your 40s. Like, I think there's underlying truths that you can provide potentially that no matter what age you are, right? There's certain advice that you could potentially give to somebody if they're thinking about taking that chance. Is there anything that comes to the top of your mind as I ask that question?
Yeah, man, I would say, um, be likable, man. Like you don't always have to be the smartest guy in the room, but you have to be the guy that people want to be around, you know? So like you talk about Parker, and I think I've said the same thing to you, and I would just give it to anybody who's, even my age. If you, walk into the room and, people perk up, and you have a big smile on your face, you're somebody people want to be around. You don't have to be the smartest guy around, but like if somebody who's super smart has a great idea and they're like, ah man, who else can we get as part of the core team? Like, dude, get Sam, get Parker, good dudes, man. Like they'll fucking work their ass off. Like I think that's a big part of it is be likable, um, and work your ass off.
Yeah.
I think that 20s, 30s, 40s, same shit. And I like to think that I feel that way about myself. Kind of walking in the room. I don't think anybody's like, oh, this fucking guy. And I think that, that's what I would say is be likable, and work hard. And I think anybody who's building a business is going to want to have somebody like that around them.
I think it's interesting too. I'll bring another name who no one on the podcast will know, not yet. Maybe one day he'll get on here, but I think of like a Jamie Hare, right?
Yeah.
Who high
A
energy and
second shout out to Jamie.
yeah. So I think we'll get Jamie on here, but somebody who like walks into a room and you're like, man, like their energy is just electric, and I'm sure everybody has that person where it's almost like baffling to a certain
Yeah.
extent, right? I take a step back and I'm like, I wish I could have some of that energy and passion for life or whatever, curiosity, you name it. And I've always asked him, like, is that an intention that you set when you wake up that you want to be that way? Is it a skill where you have over years, like just grown to become that person? Because to your point, it is advantageous. And some people might just not have that in them, right? They might not be that charismatic, outgoing person. But I will say this is that if you find yourself working on something that you're so passionate about, that charisma, that inspiration starts to come out naturally because you're just so excited about the thing that you're working on. So that might be an interesting moment for somebody where they're like, I don't have that, right? Like I don't have that ability to. But when you're talking about the thing that you fucking love, you absolutely are that person. And I think that comes to life when you kind of step into whatever that looks like for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think having that passion, that's another thing, is like, doing something that, makes you really, want to wake up every day. I mean, listen, when I was in the hedge fund space, like I loved it, man. I had a bunch of buddies that started this fund. We, worked our asses off, traveled around the world. We had a good time. We all were in the same office together. we all ate lunch together, we ate dinner together, we traveled together. Like we had fun while we were doing it. Yeah, there were some tough times and we suffered together too. I think this, same thing, in this stage of, of my career too, is like I'm involved in things that I'm having fun with and I'm passionate about. Like I said, I wouldn't get into a business if I just thought it was like, make money. No, like, can I add something? And is it going to be something I want to, show up to every day? Because I do, I said, I enjoy the meetings that we have, with Alpha. Certainly I'm a, active member of Alpha. I believe in the brand. Same thing with Salad House. Like enjoy the people around. I enjoy the food. I enjoy going to stores. Like I'm actively involved in those businesses because I love them.
Yeah.
And I think that comes through. So like, to your point earlier on passion, like it's tough to fake. Like if you're going through half motions, and like people could identify that.
Yeah. I've had so many conversations with franchise prospects, some big, right, that wanted 20 units or whatever it was, to a single location because they were members of the brand and they were just like, I want to do this thing. And I would say the best compliment that I get on those sales calls is, man, I can tell you're excited about what you're working on. And I don't even mean to be, right? So the idea about like, is it an intention I set? No, like we have poured our lives over the last 7-8 years into building this thing. I think the second that passion starts to wane is when you start to question whether or not it's worth the sweat and all of that. I think sometimes the idea of being an entrepreneur, being your own boss, starting a brand can be glamorous, right? Or it can be, from the outside looking in, it looks glamorous because realistically the pictures we paint of the pursuit of building this thing is all the best versions of it, right?
No.
But I think I've really tried to do my best to keep it very real as we've gone through this, the ups, the downs, the pandemic, right? Like every bit of this, franchising in general, right? What we're working on is really, really hard. But I think we've continued to show up and put our best foot forward. And I get excited about what that could look like for us the rest of this year, into next year, so on and so forth. And I think that matters. It goes a long way.
Well, a quick one on passion, which, is a funny story. Like, so we have a franchise partner of ours that has 2 stores going to buy, in Salad House, 2 stores going to buy a third, building a third. And, his group wants to do a few more. And we were trying to work on territories and, had meetings and, in good conscience say, hey, here's where we think, some good areas would be. And then, one area was never brought up. And we wound up, moving forward and selling, like, hey man, like we had a conversation, like you never even brought up that area. And like, but it's an area that's adjacent to his, to his area. And he was pissed, man. And like sent a nasty, note to all of us, about, hey man, like, how could you do that? I have, multiple stores and like and really took some shots. And we were like, what the fuck? Like it was uncharacteristic, and I think, after initially, getting that, kick in the nuts and from him, and like kind of feeling a certain way, I'm not for me, I'm not a big long email guy. Like, so even that long email that came in, it was like, well, that was shitty. I'll talk to you in person.
Yeah,
like, I don't want to go to the long debates over email on this is what we said in the meeting. This is like, I'm right. Like, nah, man, let's just have a conversation. But when I pulled it all back and I slept on it, I was like, man, this fucking guy wants more Salad Houses.
Yeah.
This dude is so passionate that he's pissed that something was going in, but next to him, he wanted more. Like all the things he said, I was like, yeah, man, that sucks.
Yeah.
But what his intention was, he loves the brand so much that he felt you're fucking him. Like, and I'm like, all right, man, that's workable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jerry and I are very emotional people.
Yeah, man.
And I think, listen, if I'm being honest, I think that's what's made us very strong partners over a long period of time, right? And I think it's also, it's going back to that burden, right, of responsibility. You want to do right by people. I think we both have very heavy conscience, even if we think we've done the right thing. If we feel like other people feel like we've done the wrong thing, that weighs on us, right? And
100%.
you and I will, we have trouble sleeping after it, whatever. And that's, I would say, is it a detriment to our ability to, is it a detriment to the businesses sometimes? Maybe, right? Maybe it is in terms of growth or what have you, because other people would do other things to grow the business in the wrong ways.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately it lets us grow the businesses that we want with the people that we want, with the right relationships. And I think we know, because we work so closely together, like we're always moving with best interests in mind, or at least we're trying to. We can be wrong.
Yeah.
We can say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, make the wrong decision. But in our heart, we did it with, we did the wrong things with, for all the right reasons,
Yeah,
or at least
man.
so we thought.
Like especially in that situation, like I went over my head. Like I didn't feel bad at all how I went about it. I felt like I did everything the way I thought I should have, and I think there was some errors on their side on how they went about it, and that's what was, ended in the result that it ended in. But like I slept fine, knowing, that it's unfortunate that that's the outcome, and we'll try to remedy it. But yeah, I think I wasn't trying to pull the wool over. I wasn't trying to sneak anything. I could go to sleep at night knowing like I was trying to do the right thing. I'm always going to try to do the right thing.
Yeah. When you think about the rest of this year, right? And I think, one of the things I love walking into Jerry's office, he's got the big ass calendar up on the wall.
Yeah.
And it always makes me feel like I'm not doing enough with my time, because I know how busy I think I am, and then I know how busy
Yeah.
you are. And I look at this wall, and you certainly are living life to its fullest extent. Like, as you think about game planning for this year and so on and so forth, two questions. First and foremost, as you kind of look back on this year, we push forward, we work our asses off. One, I'm curious for you if there's anything that would make this year a huge success, maybe less so on the business front, right? We obviously have certain milestones we're chasing, but more so for you personally in terms of, really, I would say how you show up over the course of this year. Is there anything where you're like, if I can look back on this year and say, I did this, I did that, I showed up in this way, that would be, you would be able to say that this year was a success?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I'm still working on, being, kind of a better leader, like even, the majority of my career, like I said, in the hedge fund space, I was probably a number 2 or number 3 guy. I was never the guy, our portfolio manager was the guy, and he had it all, man. He had, super super smart, but also savvy, man, business, like, street smart, just like a deadly combination of why someone is going to be, super rich, which he is, good for him. Shout out to you, Mark. Um, so for me, moving into what I would consider quasi be like more of a number one, and a lot of times that I'm, walking in a room, like, present company excluded, with Alpha, but like, more senior guy, just kind of being a better leader. And I think part of that is, um, bringing that even keel, that trank, that listen, let's dial it down, man.
Yeah.
Like I think in the all because we're surrounded by so many passionate people who really love everything we do, emotions run high a lot, man. Like we have people in our group, like we talk about people who are our partners, in this, in the groups that we're in, you talk about, we mentioned Tim, and we didn't bring up Rob, but like, like there's, when you talk about like operating partners are super passionate and operate with super conviction on everything they do. Like, this is the way it's got to be. I'm telling you. And like, all right, man, let's dial it down. Let's bring it back a little bit. So I think for me, kind of helping, just fly the plane, without a lot of turbulence, but still get to the destination that we want to get to, I think is something that I'm working on. And we have a lot of pieces, a lot of players. So it's a lot of different personalities. I say to Ann sometimes, like, man, who do I call? Who's my complaint hotline? Because
Yeah.
like, I feel like I get a lot of, man, this isn't happening. This isn't working. What are we going to do with it? And like, all right, man, like, let me see what, like, let's figure it out. But I don't feel like sometimes I have a helpline. It's like I could use a helpline every
Yeah.
once in a while. But that's fine. As far as, the businesses, like, me, man, like it's just continuing to get them better, continuing to move them forward. I go down to each of these studios, each of these restaurants, if we can get them to make a little more money, if we can, get the franchise owners happy, like I think everything falls into place from there. So it's really what role can I play, to make that happen, and man, part of it, I think is, as my, tenure at these businesses, a lot of it is, being able to, bring my experience and just being in business for a longer period of time and let people know like, hey, yeah, these are good businesses. You can make money here, and be able to lend my knowledge that way, as someone who's more senior in the room.
So I feel like, and I hear you on all of that, right?
Yeah.
I am one of the, I have Jerry on the hotline if I need to call him, right?
Yeah.
And complain about whatever. I try to do my best not to leverage that button, but every once in a while you need
Yeah.
that soundboard, as do you. I feel like as entrepreneurs though, and business owners, your personal life and your work life become so entrenched, right? So synonymous with one another. And I hear you on the leadership front. I hear you on, the even keel. Is there anything that you feel like as you set, the intention for the year, but also just like maybe something that you are finding yourself struggling with outside the confines of work where you're like, I need to work on this part of my mindset. And as obviously it will have a ripple effect in my work, but is there anything outside of that where you're like, in terms of my mindset, like this might need a little bit of focus?
I mean, as you get older, and you don't know this yet, but as you get older, like more shit goes wrong with you, or at least potentially can go wrong with you. So, you know, I'm doing the hard 75, now. Um, so I think that was part of me resetting because, I'm someone who really loves life and wants to do some fun stuff, when that may be eating at really good restaurants and having nice old fashions and
Hmm.
drinking with everybody and more of a social thing. But that also leads to extra pounds and probably not some good habits and that sort of thing. So I think going into this year, I wanted to really make so when Kieran was like, hey, let's, who wants to do Heart 75? Like, no, I don't want to do it,
Right.
but I think it's probably good for me to do it. Because I think, you have to be healthy, man.
Yeah.
You have to be, um, if I'm gonna influence people, my family or whatever, my friends, I need to be here,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So a focus on, just being healthier.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Not that
part of,
we're unhealthy. Like if I
yeah,
could ran the
dude,
marathon last year,
I was
like
going to say,
what I've done like 8 different high rocks
yeah.
is that sort of thing. But it's everything. It's like, you need to be, you need to be working out, you need to be able to sleep better, you need to hit the sauna, you need to walk, you need to do all these things, you need to maintain a good relationship with your family, your wife, your kids, um, all those things, because that's the most important stuff.
Yeah. I think and the reason I've almost asked that question on every single one of these podcasts, because again, I think one of the things that I will continue to try and do both personally and quite frankly for other people is the fact that, we continuously scroll social media, we listen to podcasts, everybody knows the right thing to say, the right thing to post. Like it's almost like this, everyone is making life look picture perfect and X, Y, and Z. And people who have achieved what you've achieved or are building what you're building, and same for me to an extent, are still struggling with certain things in their own personal life. And like, no one's perfect. Like, we're all figuring it out as we go. And so part of the reason I bring that up is so that somebody listening can start to relate to, what it is that we're dealing with outside the confines of just building these businesses or what have you, right? And so I think it's just, a reality check for all of us and an opportunity for us to check in with ourselves to be like, you know what, like, I'm so hyper focused in on this work, but I also know I need to take care of this because there's other things outside of just what we do from, let's say, 5 in the morning until 9 at night is a joke. But like, there's so many different pieces to life that not any one of it can be completely shut off or disregarded because it all impacts everything.
I mean, what's going on in my head is, I probably said this to you before, I don't feel like I've accomplished shit. Like like, yeah, maybe in the hedge fund space, like, yeah, I had some nice successes, but like the way I look at myself right now, like you haven't done shit in this business yet. You have 2 businesses that are on the way, but like, all right, man, like it's on the way, but it ain't there. Neither one of them are there yet. Like you better still work your ass off to get them there,
Hmm.
with all those people betting on you, because right now, the way I see it, like you still got a lot of work to do and you haven't accomplished shit, in your life, as far as these businesses go. That's what goes on in my head right now.
What is there, right? What is, when you say you haven't made it there yet, what is there? Is it perfecting the system and these stores or studios opening incredibly well and 90% of them making money? Is a really high functioning business there? And when you can take a step back and say, that's fucking great. Like, we built something fucking great. And you
Yeah,
just know that there's maybe gaps in the armor.
yeah, and maybe I don't maybe truly even know what that is yet, but like I want these businesses to run so well and to be so coveted that I want people coming after them like, I need to fucking have them, man. Like I need to buy more of these, or I need to own that company. I need bidding, like people want to bidding more. We go back to Pliables. I mean, they had private equity come in and buy the company once, and then, that Rob stuck around and somebody else bought it again and, made hundreds of millions of dollars. And it's less about the money, but it's more of like, I did it, man. That
Yeah.
the achievement of that, like I created something that was so awesome that multiple people were bidding on it. Like, I don't know, for me, that's the validation that like I haven't, I don't think I've seen yet.
I
And
think getting clear on that too for anybody who owns any business in terms of like what excellence looks like, or I've made it there, right? Because I think what oftentimes happen, and it's happened to me a couple times already, right, is like you think that once you get X, Y, and Z accomplishment, like that's there, right?
Yeah.
But it's just like it's just further down the road, and that might be fine, right? That might
Yeah.
be that might keep things in motion, but I think understanding what there actually is for you, I think is a powerful exercise to go through because again, whether we're talking about building a business or we're just saying like, what that higher caliber version of ourselves looks like, really just getting crystal clear and then reverse engineering and saying, okay, like what is it going to look like? What is it going to take to get there?
Yeah.
I use the analogy of like somebody comes to me and says, I want to run a 3-hour marathon, right? And we reverse engineer what that process looks like, the work that's required. And then you have an honest conversation with yourself. And are you sure that's the goal that you want? Because this is what it's going to take to get there. And I think doing that even with this and with life is a good exercise to go through because you might not even really want to do the work that you need to do to get where you want to go.
Well, I think in order to get to what I'm talking about, like it goes back to what I originally talked about, which is like those unit economics and those happy franchise owners and that sort of thing. Because, if we go back to the Pliables, like the reason why Pliables got to where it was is that so many people wanted to buy them. It became viral. Hey, man, I need to scoop it up. I need to have one. I need to have one. And that soon became, private equity saying the same thing. Like, whoa, what is this? These guys are doing something special. So, but it all starts with those people weren't going crazy just because like Ramona painted the walls really cool,
Right.
Or that acai was like the best, it was, those things, but like everybody was making money, It was funny when I went to one of the Pliables early on, one of the owners meetings they had, it's just funny because everybody's, always bitching about something. So they, it's such a successful brand. Everybody like went around the room just like bitch, 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 bitch. I was like, oh my gosh, like everybody hates this brand now. Like what's going on? And like, and then like, yeah, we all have one big problem. Like we can't get, resolved. And I'm like, okay, what's this going to be? And like, how do we buy more of these things? It's like, what? Like you just straight out bitched to this guy who founded this company for the last 2 hours on all the things that was wrong. But in the end, you're like, how do I buy more of these? I'm frustrated because I want to buy more of these. All right. Well, that all goes back to what we're talking about, which is those, there, everybody was making money. You can bitch all you want. Maybe there were some things they weren't doing right. It was flawed, but in the end, they made money. And I think that's in order for us, to achieve what we want to achieve, or at least in my mind, I think what would satisfy me would, we need to continue to focus on those unit economics, because those translate into the big win.
Yeah, I think and I asked the question partially selfishly because I asked it to myself, and I think the underlying feeling that I'm like looking for is this feeling of just feeling proud of what it is that we've built, right? And I think to your point, there's many things that fall into what will make me proud of what we built. But I think I have this weird vision where I walk into an Alpha Fit Club that nobody knows who I am. Right? I get to go take class and every single bit of my experience is perfect. I walk in and I'm meted and greeted and the desk is friendly and they give me this perfect tour and they ask the questions we know that they need to ask. I go in, the studio looks spotless. It looks amazing. The staff is well dressed. They're excited to be there. You can tell that they like each other. The members are all mingling. The lights go low. The music starts to bump. It's this perfect execution
Sounds
of
awesome.
exactly what we built. And it's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
It's like this studio in the middle of nowhere, exactly how we designed it to be. And I know if it's that experience, we will have done everything, we've needed to do to build the business that you're talking about on a larger scale where people are making money, members are excited about it. Like that's what I know I want us to build. I know we have a long way to go to get there, but like I have that clear vision.
Yeah.
And luckily I'm pretty confident I know the work that's required to get us there. And there's a gap. There's no doubt about it. But we're not that far from it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree that we're not that far from it. And but I also agree, I also think you can make one wrong move and you can go the other direction.
Yeah.
And I don't think we could ever take that for granted.
Yeah. The pressure's on, like we talked about. Listen, man, I think this was a great conversation. I appreciate you. But I'm glad we both didn't cry.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit,
Yeah.
tears.
But we're emotional. I mean,
Emotional,
I
man.
think there's some power in that emotion.
No doubt. But I appreciate you massively. You can always call me to complain. And
you know me, I don't call anybody to complain.
And you can call Ann.
No, she knows, she gets it.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you.
I appreciate you having me, even though it was only the fourth one.
Listen, it's the first on the scoreboard. So
appreciate it.
I appreciate it, brother. Thank you. Beauty.